What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, Advantage Player Workshop. It is Sunday, February 23rd, and we are going to get back to a little bit more of an educational type video or instructional on how I like to use the various angles that you can see with my laser right here. So I've got it underneath the rail. And this is going to be a little bit more back to what we started the channel on. I knew I had to start with something unique in order to pick up any kind of traction, but now that we've got a full table here, let's try to remake one of these, or just review what we've already made in past videos, but with just a different setting and such. So, before I had discussed on, I'm going to throw a little bit just to kind of loosen up, so no promises on what any of this is going to look like, but before in the beginning, how I told you I never changed my set. I always pretty much used this one here, and that was true, especially at home. And it did a couple things for me, right? I knew it really well. I knew what was on which side of the dice. Not like it's not easy to figure out, but it's just what I knew. And then I experimented with throwing that same set all over the place using different lines, different speeds, different angles, different face angle. Some tilt angle was involved. On a much firmer surface, you could use it a little more effectively on firmer surfaces. And then, as I mentioned, after constructing this table, right? After constructing this table, we kept adding layers of surfaces to try to simulate different bounces, so that way, for our own development and all that stuff, if people had brought it up, we decided to go ahead and do it. And that's how we did it. And so as we got to the surfaces to be a little bit more bouncy or cushiony, we would have to change and use a little bit less of that tilt angle, but we would constantly be using a little bit of face angle, just based on the way that we released our dice and how they were facing when they left. And it's not good or bad, it's just how we did it, and then we would just observe what would happen using those different angles. And then knowing that we could repeat the throw in a pretty decent fashion, right? That it would begin to do different things. So we knew we could just kind of change our throw, but once we found something we liked, we would just try to keep that the same. And that's where you would really develop those skills as far as how to throw in different areas, using different angles. And then again, all it would do was just produce different results. And so with the same set, right? So you could, ooh, that was a little gross. And even though it was with the same set, right, you could just get more different types of results using different throw techniques and angles versus changing sets. But then as we've come out here, we've experimented more, we started playing around with different sets, but I never changed using the angles. That's always common because, like I said, when I say get your throw figured out, what I mean really is make sure your landings are about the same, within an inch or two, and then your face angles are the same. Just make sure you're releasing the dice, about the same way every single time. And then once you can do that, that was coming in a little steeper. I'm just kind of finding my range a little bit. Once you can repeat things about the same way every single time, you'll start to get a similar pattern popping up. And then you can just change the elements of the throw slightly, even if the line is about the same or the trajectory is a little lower. You can start to really manipulate the dice in a way where you could get a lot of the same repeating numbers. I mean, this is kind of what I'm talking about. Some of these have fallen short, I'm not going to lie, but it's the same thing. I'm not really doing much different. They just landed a little shorter, landed a little farther, but they're still facing the same way. And but a lot of those other tilt angle, pretty much only the tilt angle coming in hotter or faster would just create a lot more chaos. And then on this one, and it's not that initial chaos, it's that extra, it's all that extra stuff. That initial landing and hitting the wall, that part is going to look chaotic no matter pretty much what you're doing. But if you can do it the same way every time, right, you can really get into you'll really get to see the patterns no matter what it looks like. Okay, you're going to start to see you're doing something a little different, you're getting a little bit of outcome. So then let's now reverse engineer that whole theory. And you know, like let's say you walk up to a table and you're just absolutely money no matter what you do as far as your landing, and it looks just like that, right? Okay, if that looks like that right when you walk up and you're getting a really good result, you know, then all you got to do is, you know, then without moving the set around, just start to throw the dice a little bit differently. You know, you still know what's going to happen if you double pitch and 7 out and all that. That's not going to change. You're trying to explore different numbers, throwing it just a little bit differently each time, and see what ends up happening. And that's really what you're doing in practice, right? You're learning all of these ways, using that same set, how to change your throw around slightly to get, you know, to get those different numbers. That was a little bit extra, but what do you think? I mean, as you can see, let me move these back down here because it's getting a little long for the view. There you go. So you know what? And then something kind of starts to change. We change our throw a little bit, and then you know, and then it seems like if that's what you're observing. We had a great comment on one of the videos. Guides basically kind of preach what I had been saying for a very long time. You know, you get yourself so practiced. You get yourself so practiced up that he said he had a little bit more control than I probably would say. I wouldn't say I have that much control. But whether I do or I don't, I'm going to undersell. I'm not going to say it's 100%. I would never do it. It's, you know, I'm controlling a lot. Okay. And then ultimately, you know, here she comes, right? And so whatever that was, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that was a 13 roll before we 7'd out, totally ice cold. But as you can see, we were pretty consistent. I threw the dice 5 times before I turned the camera on, just to see what it was going to look like, and I was happy with it, so I turned the camera on. I don't do a ton of warming up, really. And so I just don't like to waste my time turning the camera on if I can't even keep them on the table. So, but anyway, I think you kind of got a little bit of a notice there, but you know, now we can go back and rewatch where they landed in relation to that line. Okay, that's the other part. That's how you start to reverse engineer it. But essentially, you know, on that one there, I wasn't changing my line as much as I was just trying to release them a little lower, release them a little higher. You know, I was changing the landing angles a little bit. Now, the next one, what you can do is, right, is you start just aiming a little left. I probably did a little bit of that because I know on one or two of them, I was intentionally going right or left. But I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it in my hand, how I'm letting it go, okay? So I could pick the same line, directional, like from right here, within 5 to 6 grooves, right or left. This over here, that's a whole new ball game. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay, what I'm talking about is this is your center line, somewhere within a 15 row span, with 7.5 roughly being right in the middle, or let's call it 16. Okay, 8 and 8 on each side, and anywhere in between there's that. That's about as far over as you're going to go. But what you can also do is you can release them pretty much in a tighter window, but just release them a little differently. You know, like add just a little bit more spin with your wrist or with your fingertip, you know, or just simply by the way that you choose to grip them. Okay, like I can throw the dice the same way just about every time, but hold them differently. One time I let them go like this, the other time I let them go before, you know, that's how I'm gripping them. If that helps you a little bit right there. You know, we've made videos of this. And so all of these little things that you experiment with, and it's not saying it's better or worse than one thing or the other. What it is doing, though, it's just developing that, it's really developing that feel so that you don't have to really worry so much about, you know, changing your set around until maybe way later in the session, you know. So, you know, obviously you're putting them on a set. Pick a set that you know when you get started, and then you go, you know, and then you just see what happens, and, you know, figure your throw out, and then, you know, and then work it that way, and then see, okay, which dice is doing what? Is this one getting off axis? Is this one getting off axis more than this one? And which side is it turning over on? Am I keeping both of them on axis really well? How is my pitching? Right? How is my dice rotation? Is one going more than the other? And if it is, how many times? Just reading the dice that way, so you're doing it all, you're kind of putting it all together. And the more that you do it, you don't need to do it, you don't have to spend so much time really getting into the weeds. It starts to become a little more natural for you. And what's funny is that making these videos, I spend almost no time thinking about that because my brain is thinking about the commentary and whatnot. So I've really kind of gotten away from it. To be honest, because this is a whole different thing that I'm not normally doing when I'm playing craps, right? And so that's the difference that I've experienced doing this, but it hasn't made me a poor, player. I don't think it's just different. And so, doing all this has obviously made me better, which, nobody's going to complain about that. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, but I think that's a good, quick lesson on, angles, right? And then that's your directional line. Right, from center line. If my center line is right about here, well, that's my center line, and then everything is either right or left of that within, however many pyramid rows that you want to choose, depending on your accuracy. Then when you start going over here, that's a whole nother story. And so, but I get a different dice result typically when I throw the dice over here, right, and then I get a different one when I come over here. Even if I keep everything else the same. If I start changing, now if I keep this the same, but I change this when they land, okay, that's another way to do it. And then anywhere in between, any little combination that you want to try to use to try to get to a number that you like, if you're going to do it that way, or you can just go back to keeping everything the exact same. If you like how your dice are landing and you're happy with that, well, then you can start moving the set around, or do both, right? But then the more skilled and experienced and just the more hours you've logged and all that, it's going to come a little more naturally. Then you're going to start to be able to know, okay, well, wait a minute, let me just turn my dice over one more time like this, and then do it, and then try to hit that number, which you've seen me do numerous times. And so it's just kind of one of those things. It just comes to you in little bits and increments, but it does come. And you're going to love it when it does, because you're just going to have things happen to you that you didn't even expect. It's been happening to me for quite a long time, to be honest. That's what I started the whole channel on. And some of the first ones were some of the cheesiest ones about how it's a magical moment. And that's no different. What just happened to me in Las Vegas hitting the ATS on my first time with the dice, it was just a crazy one of those things. And it's like you spent so much time doing this, magic just seems to happen, right? So, it's like that picture I've got over here. Hang on a second. I've had this up on my wall for years. This is actually hanging in the back of my wall, I think, when I first got started. It was up above like the rock or something. Luck is predictable. The harder you work, the luckier you get. This game is living proof of it, I swear. And so, great. It's a great words to live by. So I hope you enjoyed this one. We'll see you on the next one.